I never thought renting out my late mother's apartment would destroy my marriage, turn my sister against me, and leave me questioning everything I thought I knew about love and loyalty. My name is Emma. I'm 34 years old, and until 6 months ago, I had what everyone called the perfect life. A stable marriage to David, my college sweetheart of 12 years. A beautiful home in the suburbs of Charlotte, North Carolina. A career as a high school English teacher that I genuinely loved. But perfection, I've learned, is just a carefully constructed illusion that crumbles the moment you stop paying attention to the cracks. It all started when my mother passed away last spring. She left me her apartment in downtown Charlotte, a cozy 2-bedroom place she'd lived in for 20 years. The grief was overwhelming, and for weeks I couldn't even bring myself to go through her things. David suggested we rent it out instead of selling it. "It'll be a good investment," he said, barely looking up from his phone, "and you're not ready to let it go yet." He was right about that last part, at least. What I didn't know was that this decision would become the catalyst for everything that followed. I posted the listing online, and within days, I had dozens of inquiries. Most were from college students or young professionals, but one application stood out. His name was Marcus, 28 years old, a freelance architect who just moved to Charlotte from Seattle. His references were impeccable. His credit score was excellent, and when we met for the apartment viewing, I was struck by how respectful and mature he seemed. He had these warm brown eyes that crinkled when he smiled, and he spoke about my mother's apartment with genuine appreciation for its character and history. "I can tell someone really loved this place," he said, running his hand along the kitchen counter my mother had chosen herself. If you're enjoying this story so far, please hit that subscribe button. I share real stories from real people, and your support means everything to this channel. David barely glanced at Marcus's application before approving it. "Seems fine," he muttered, his attention already back on the basketball game playing on TV. That was becoming David's default response to everything lately. "Seems fine. Whatever. Sure." Our conversations had devolved into a series of grunts and monosyllables, and I couldn't remember the last time he'd actually looked at me. Really looked at me, the way he used to when we first fell in love. Marcus moved in on a Saturday in late April. I'd decided to stop by that afternoon to make sure everything was in order, and to give him a spare set of keys I'd forgotten during the lease signing. When I knocked, he answered wearing paint-stained jeans and a gray t-shirt, his hair slightly messy. "Emma, hi, come in please. I was just trying to figure out the best spot for my drafting table." The apartment smelled like fresh coffee and something sweet, maybe cinnamon. He'd already started making it his own, but he'd kept my mother's plants alive on the windowsill, something that touched me more than I expected. We ended up talking for over an hour. He told me about his architectural projects, his dreams of starting his own firm someday, how he'd left Seattle after a painful breakup. I found myself sharing things too, more than I'd intended. About my mother, about teaching, about how sometimes I felt like I was just going through the motions of a life I wasn't sure I'd consciously chosen. "I know exactly what you mean," Marcus said quietly. "It's like waking up one day and realizing you're living someone else's script." When I got home that evening, David didn't even ask where I'd been. The next few weeks passed in a strange blur. I told myself I was just being a responsible landlord when I started checking in on Marcus more frequently. A leaky faucet here, a question about the heating system there. But the truth was, talking to him made me feel alive in a way I hadn't felt in years. He listened when I spoke. He asked follow-up questions. He remembered details from previous conversations. He made me laugh with his dry humor and his stories about disastrous client meetings. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a story like this one. Trust me, you'll want to hear how this ends. One evening in early May, I stopped by to drop off some mail that had been delivered to my house by mistake. Marcus invited me in for coffee, and I should have said no. I should have made an excuse and left. But I didn't. We sat on my mother's old couch, the one I couldn't bear to remove, and talked until almost midnight. He told me about his ex-fiancée, how she'd cheated on him with his best friend. "The worst part wasn't even the betrayal," he said, staring into his coffee cup. "It was realizing I'd missed all the signs because I was too busy trying to be the perfect partner, trying to make her happy while completely losing myself." His words hit me like a punch to the chest because they described exactly how I felt about my marriage. "Are you happy, Emma?" he asked suddenly, his eyes meeting mine with an intensity that made my breath catch. I should have lied. I should have said yes, of course, everything's perfect. Instead, I heard myself say, I don't remember what happy feels like anymore. Something shifted between us in that moment. The air felt charged, heavy with unspoken possibilities. Marcus reached out and gently tucked a strand of hair behind my ear, his fingers barely grazing my cheek. You deserve to be happy, he whispered. I left quickly after that, my heart pounding, my hands shaking as I drove home. David was already asleep when I got there, facing away from me like he always did now. I lay awake all night, replaying that moment over and over, hating myself for how much I wanted Marcus to touch me again. The guilt started eating at me immediately. I was a married woman. I'd taken vows. I'd stood in front of our families and friends and promised to love David forever. But those vows felt like they'd been spoken by a different person, a younger, more naive version of myself who believed love alone was enough. The woman lying in bed next to her emotionally absent husband wasn't that person anymore. I tried to stay away from the apartment. I really did. For 2 whole weeks, I didn't visit, didn't call, didn't even drive past the building. I threw myself into end-of-year school activities, grading papers late into the night, anything to keep my mind occupied. But Marcus texted me occasionally. Innocent messages at first. The azaleas in the garden are blooming beautifully. Your mother had great taste. Then, gradually, they became more personal. Reading your favorite book tonight. I can see why you love it. And finally, I miss talking to you. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do it now. These stories depend on your support, and I have so much more to share. I broke on a Tuesday afternoon. David had canceled our dinner plans, again, claiming he had to work late, again. I knew he wasn't having an affair. Part of me almost wished he was, because then at least I'd understand his distance. No, David had simply checked out of our marriage without officially leaving. He was physically present but emotionally absent, and somehow that felt worse than betrayal. I texted Marcus. Are you home? Yes. Everything okay? Can I come over? Always. When he opened the door, he didn't ask any questions. He just pulled me into a hug, and I broke down crying against his chest. All the loneliness, the frustration, the grief I'd been holding in for months came pouring out. He held me until I stopped shaking, then made tea and let me talk. I told him everything. About David's emotional withdrawal, about feeling invisible in my own marriage, about the crushing weight of pretending everything was fine. You're not invisible, Marcus said firmly. You're the most vibrant, intelligent, passionate person I've ever met. If David can't see that, he's a fool. We were sitting close on the couch, closer than we should have been. I could feel the warmth of his body next to mine, could smell his cologne, could see the way he was looking at me like I was something precious and rare. Marcus, I started to say, but I didn't know how to finish the sentence. I know, he said softly. I feel it too. He leaned in slowly, giving me every opportunity to pull away. I didn't. When his lips met mine, it felt like coming home and falling off a cliff at the same time. The kiss was tender at first, tentative, almost questioning. Then it deepened, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Desire, real and raw and overwhelming. We pulled apart, both breathing hard. I should go, I whispered, but I didn't move. Probably, he agreed, but his hand was still cupping my face. I didn't go. Instead, I kissed him again, and this time there was no hesitation. We moved to his bedroom, leaving a trail of rational thought and moral certainty behind us. What happened next was beautiful and terrifying and wrong and right all at once. He was gentle and attentive, treating my body like something to be cherished rather than taken for granted. Afterward, lying in his arms, I felt more like myself than I had in years, and that realization broke my heart. Make sure you're subscribed, because this story is about to take a turn you won't see coming. I drove home at 3 a.m. knowing I'd crossed a line I could never uncross. David was still asleep, oblivious, and I stood in our bedroom doorway watching him, feeling like a stranger in my own life. Who had I become? I'd always prided myself on being a good person, someone with integrity and values. Now I was a cheater, an adulterer, someone who broke the most fundamental promise a person can make. The affair continued for 3 months. That's not something I'm proud of, but I won't lie about it either. I became someone I didn't recognize. Someone who made elaborate excuses to see her lover, who deleted text messages and cleared browser histories, who lied with increasing ease. Every Tuesday and Thursday, I told David I was attending after-school meetings or staying late to help struggling students. Instead, I went to Marcus's apartment, to my mother's apartment, a space that became both sanctuary and crime scene. With Marcus, I laughed again. I talked about my dreams again. I felt desired and appreciated and seen. He'd cook dinner for us, and we'd eat on the balcony watching the sunset over Charlotte's skyline. He'd sketch while I graded papers, occasionally looking up to smile at me like I was the most fascinating thing in the world. We made love, yes, but we also just talked for hours, sharing our fears and hopes and all the small details that make up a life. Leave him, Marcus urged more than once. We could build something real together, Emma. You know this is more than just an affair. But I couldn't. I was terrified of what divorce would mean, of disappointing my family, of being judged by everyone who thought David and I had the perfect marriage. Terrified that maybe what I felt for Marcus was just an escape fantasy that would dissolve in the harsh light of reality. Terrified that I'd lose everything and end up with nothing. Then my sister found out. Jessica had always been the responsible one, the one who followed all the rules and expected everyone else to do the same. She was married to her high school sweetheart, had 3 kids, volunteered at church, and had very clear ideas about right and wrong. When she showed up at my house unannounced one Saturday morning in late July, I knew something was wrong from the look on her face. "I saw you," she said without preamble. "Last Thursday, coming out of Mom's apartment building with him. Don't even think about lying to me, Emma." My stomach dropped. "Jess, I can explain." "Explain what?" "That you're cheating on your husband. That you're using our dead mother's apartment to have an affair. That you've become exactly the kind of person we always looked down on." Her words cut deep because they echoed my own self-recrimination. "You don't understand what it's been like with David," I tried to explain. "I don't care what it's been like," she shouted. "You made vows. If you were unhappy, you should have gone to counseling, worked on your marriage, left him if it came to that. But this? Sneaking around, lying, betraying him. This is unforgivable, Emma. Subscribe if you want to know what happened next. This story isn't over yet. She gave me an ultimatum. End the affair and tell David, or she would. I had 1 week. Jessica left without another word, and I sat in my empty house feeling the walls closing in. That night, David actually noticed something was wrong. "You okay?" he asked, the most attention he'd paid me in months. "We need to talk," I heard myself say. For the first time in our marriage, we really talked. I didn't confess to the affair, not yet, but I told him everything else. How lonely I'd been, how invisible I felt, how our marriage had become just 2 people existing in the same space without really connecting. To my surprise, David started crying. "I know," he admitted. "I felt it too. After we lost the baby, I shut down. I didn't know how to deal with my grief, so I buried myself in work and pretended everything was fine. I thought you were fine too because you never said anything. The baby. We'd gotten pregnant 2 years ago, unexpectedly, but joyfully. I'd miscarried at 12 weeks. We'd never talked about it afterward, just moved on like it hadn't happened, like we hadn't lost a future we'd started to imagine. I wasn't fine," I whispered. "I needed you, and you weren't there." "I'm sorry," he said, reaching for my hand. "I'm so sorry, Em. Can we try again? Can we fix this?" I looked at my husband, really looked at him for the first time in months, and saw the man I'd fallen in love with in college, the one who'd stayed up all night helping me study for my teaching exams, the one who'd held me when my mother was diagnosed with cancer. He was still in there, buried under layers of pain and avoidance. "I don't know," I answered honestly. I don't know if we can come back from this. But you're willing to try? He asked hopefully. Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. I need to see you, it's important. I looked at that message, then at David's hopeful face, and I felt torn in half. This was my crossroads moment. The point where I had to choose between the familiar comfort of my marriage and the passionate uncertainty of something new. I told David I needed to go pick up something from the store. Another lie. I was so good at them now. I drove to the apartment, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. Marcus opened the door with a smile that faded when he saw my face. What's wrong? Everything, I said, stepping inside. Jessica knows. She gave me a week to tell David, or she will. And David. Tonight, David actually opened up to me for the first time in 2 years. He wants to fix our marriage. Marcus went very still. And what do you want? I don't know. The words came out as a cry. I love being with you. You make me feel alive. But David and I have 12 years of history. We built a life together. I can't just throw that away. Can't or won't? Marcus asked quietly. If you're not subscribed yet, please subscribe now. I need your support to keep sharing these stories. That's not fair, I protested. None of this is fair, Emma. It's not fair to David that you've been lying to him. It's not fair to me that I fell in love with a woman who can't fully be mine. It's not fair to you that you're stuck between two impossible choices. You love me? I whispered. Of course I love you, he said, pulling me close. I've loved you since that first day when you talked about your mother's plants with tears in your eyes. I've loved you through every Tuesday and Thursday and stolen moment. I want all of you, Emma. Not just the secret parts, not just the afternoons you can sneak away. I want morning coffee and weekend brunches and meeting your friends and building a real life together. I started crying and he held me while I sobbed. I love you too, I admitted. But I'm scared, Marcus. I'm terrified of making the wrong choice. Then don't choose yet, he said. Tell David the truth. Tell him about us. See what happens. You deserve to make this decision with all the cards on the table, not backed into a corner by your sister's ultimatum. He was right. I knew he was right. But the thought of telling David made me physically ill. I went home that night and lay awake until dawn, rehearsing the conversation in my head. How do you tell someone you've loved for over a decade that you've been unfaithful? That you've fallen in love with someone else? That the life you built together might be fundamentally broken? Sunday morning, I made David his favorite breakfast, pancakes with fresh blueberries, bacon, the good coffee from the local roaster. He looked surprised and pleased. What's the occasion? We need to talk, I said again, my voice shaking. Really talk. We sat at the kitchen table where we'd shared thousands of meals, where we'd made plans for our future, where we'd dreamed together about the family we'd have someday. And I destroyed everything. I told him about Marcus, about the affair, about falling in love with another man. I watched his face go through stages of shock, denial, anger, and finally, devastation. He didn't yell. He didn't throw things. He just sat there with tears streaming down his face, looking at me like I was a stranger. How long? He asked finally. 3 months. Where? Mom's apartment. He flinched like I'd hit him. You used your mother's place? Emma, how could you? I don't know, I whispered. I don't have a good answer for that. Do you love him? I could have lied. Maybe I should have. But I'd done enough lying. Yes. David stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. I need you to leave. Pack some things and go. I can't. I can't look at you right now. Don't forget to subscribe and share this story. I'm almost at the end and you need to hear what happens. I threw some clothes in a bag with shaking hands. Where was I supposed to go? Not to Jessica, who hated me now. Not to the apartment, which felt too much like the scene of the crime. I ended up at a budget hotel near the highway, sitting on a scratchy comforter in a room that smelled like stale cigarette smoke, my entire life in ruins around me. I called Marcus. I told him. How did he take it? As well as you'd expect. He kicked me out. I'm at a hotel. Come here, Marcus said immediately. Come to the apartment. You shouldn't be alone. But I couldn't. Somehow, going to Marcus now felt like rubbing salt in David's wounds. I need to be by myself tonight. I need to think. Over the next few weeks, everything fell apart. David filed for divorce. Jessica stopped speaking to me entirely and told our extended family what I'd done, turning most of them against me. Several people at school found out somehow, and I could feel the judgment in their eyes. The perfect Emma, the sweet English teacher with the stable marriage, had fallen from grace spectacularly. David wanted the house, wanted everything. I didn't fight him. How could I? I was the one who destroyed our marriage. My lawyer told me I was being foolish, that I had rights, but I felt like I deserved to lose everything. Marcus was patient through all of it. He held me while I cried, listened to me rage and grieve, never once saying, "I told you so," or pressuring me to commit to him. "Take your time," he said. "I'm not going anywhere." But doubt started creeping in. Was what Marcus and I had real, or was it just the intensity of an affair, artificially heightened by secrecy and stolen moments? Would we work in the real world, when we had to deal with bills and bad moods and all the mundane realities of a relationship? Or would we burn out quickly, leaving me with nothing? Then, 2 months after I told David, something happened that changed everything again. I was at the apartment with Marcus on a Thursday evening when someone knocked on the door. Marcus went to answer it, and I heard David's voice. "I need to talk to Emma. I know she's here." My heart started pounding. Marcus looked back at me questioningly, and I nodded. David came in, and the two of them stood facing each other for a long moment. I half expected David to punch Marcus, but he didn't. "I'm not here to fight," David said quietly. "I just need to talk to my wife, to my soon-to-be ex-wife." Marcus left, diplomatically saying he'd give us privacy. David and I sat down in my mother's living room, the irony not lost on either of us. "I hate what you did," David started. "I hate that you lied to me. I hate that you fell in love with someone else. But these past 2 months being alone in that house, I've had a lot of time to think. And I realized something. We were broken long before Marcus came into the picture." I nodded, tears already forming. "I failed you, Emma. I checked out of our marriage after the miscarriage because I didn't know how to deal with my grief, and I was scared that if we tried again and lost another baby, I wouldn't survive it. So I just shut down. I stopped being your husband. I stopped being your partner. I became a roommate who occasionally shared your bed." "David, let me finish," he said. "I'm not saying what you did was okay. It wasn't. But I understand why you did it. You were drowning, and I wasn't there to save you, so you found someone who was. I'm angry, and I'm hurt, but I also understand. Make sure you're subscribed, because the ending of this story is something you need to hear." "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "Because I don't want you to spend the rest of your life drowning in guilt. You're not a bad person, Emma. You're a good person who made bad choices in an impossible situation. We both did." He paused, seeming to gather his courage. "And because I want you to know that if you wanted to try again, if you wanted to work on us, I'd be willing. We'd need therapy, a lot of it. We'd need to completely rebuild our relationship from the ground up. But I'm willing if you are." I stared at him in shock. "You'd take me back? After everything?" "I still love you," he said simply. "Love doesn't just disappear because someone hurt you. It's bruised and battered, but it's still there." After David left, I sat in stunned silence. Marcus came back in and immediately saw something had shifted. "What did he say?" Marcus asked carefully. I told him everything. When I finished, Marcus was quiet for a long time. "Do you want to go back to him?" he finally asked. "I don't know," I admitted. "Part of me does. We have so much history. We built a life together. Maybe we could rebuild it into something better. And the other part? The other part wants to be with you. Wants to see where this goes. Wants to build something new instead of trying to fix something broken." Marcus took my hands in his. "Emma, I love you. I want a future with you. But I won't be your second choice. I won't be the guy you settle for because you're too scared to go back to your husband. You need to decide what you really want, not what's safe or what will make other people happy. What do you want? And that's where I am now, sitting in this apartment that belonged to my mother, caught between two men who both love me in different ways. David represents my past, the comfort of the familiar, the possibility of redemption and rebuilding. Marcus represents my future, the excitement of the unknown, the promise of passion and being truly seen. My sister hasn't spoken to me in 4 months. My family thinks I'm a homewrecker and a disgrace. My colleagues whisper behind my back. The divorce will be final in 6 weeks unless David and I both agree to stop it. I have to make a choice. Do I go back to my husband and try to rebuild what we had? Do I move forward with Marcus and see if what we have can survive outside the bubble of an affair? Or do I walk away from both of them and try to find myself again before I can love anyone else? I don't know what the right answer is. I don't know if there is a right answer. All I know is that in trying to find happiness, I've hurt the people I care about most. I've become someone I swore I'd never be. I've learned that love isn't always enough, that passion can coexist with guilt, and that sometimes there are no good choices, only less terrible ones. So I'm asking you, because I genuinely don't know. What would you do in my place? Would you try to fix the marriage you broke? Would you embrace the new love that came from betrayal? Or would you walk away from both and start over alone? Please, leave your answer in the comments. Subscribe if you haven't already, because I need to hear from you. I need to know what you think, what you'd do, how you'd navigate this impossible situation. Maybe your perspective will help me see something I've been missing. Because in 3 days, I have to give David my final answer. And in 3 days, I'll either be trying to rebuild my marriage, starting a new life with Marcus, or walking away from both to find out who Emma really is when she's not defined by the men she loves. What would you do? Please tell me. I'm listening.